Viewer discretion. Some viewers may find some elements and topics in this video disturbing. This experience happened to me 2 years ago now, and is a part of my life I will always look back on, and because of one certain individual, it has left a mark and a scar on certain areas of my life. When it comes to relationships, I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully trust again. My horrifying experience is one that, in sad reality, happens to many people out there, and something I wouldn't wish upon anyone in a relationship. So, I will share my experience so you can get an understanding of the horrors that can lie out there. You never truly know someone until you're alone with them, behind closed doors. They may seem like the perfect person in front of others, and you may believe that at first. You may imagine that no problems exist between you and the one you love, but as time goes on, you begin to see the true side of people and the chilling reality of what they're capable of. And when you have dated someone for all of just 6 months, you begin to see who they are. And by that point, for someone like me, you're already locked in. I met a guy at university through friends of friends. We were introduced to each other at a party, and we, in honesty, had an instant connection. I'll refer to him here as James, as I won't be using real names in here as I feel more comfortable not doing so. I had only one serious relationship in my life at the time, and that lasted all of 2 years, my first love. So for me to meet someone and have an instant connection and find them attractive, funny and captivating was again new to me, as I hadn't had many relationships, but James ticked all them boxes, and that whole night we chatted, drank and danced the night away. I remember laughing at all his jokes, and he would say I had a cute laugh, and at the end of the night, when we were saying our goodbyes, it was then James asked me for my number, stating he would love to take me on a date. The thought of a date excited me, and we swapped numbers. The smile on his face beamed at me as our eyes locked and I had butterflies. He then leant in, kissing me. It surprised me in a good way, and it felt right. After saying our goodbyes, James went off with his friends as I did with mine, all the while talking with my friends about him. None of them knew him, as he was a friend of one of the guys at our university. James wasn't attending our university. He was slightly older and had finished his year studying the year prior, but was still local to the area and always came down to see his friends. The next day, he texted me telling me how great it was meeting me and that he would love to see me again. And with that, we texted over the coming days constantly and arranged a date. Our first date was at a restaurant, and it couldn't have gone better. Great food, great company, and we laughed into the night. I could feel something there with James, and it wasn't long before we were 5 dates in. On our 5th date, things were going so well, and it was that night James asked me out and we made it official. We're now a couple. The first few months of our relationship went well. We spent a lot of time with each other, as you do at the beginning of a relationship. You might say too much time as you're inseparable at first, but it wasn't until a few months in, I began to see changes in James. And not the good type. It started off with little things at first, like when I didn't get back to him straight away in a text, it would be followed by multiple calls and voicemails asking what I was up to or where I was. But sometimes I wouldn't see the message or finish work later than expected, and at first, he would be snappy with me, but after explaining why I hadn't replied, he would go back to the normal James I knew. With James having his own place, I stayed there a lot, so I'd always be there with him after uni or work, and it was one evening, I was in the kitchen with him whilst he was washing up when I told him of my plans to go and meet 3 of my friends I'd known since school, one being a guy. The moment I mentioned Sean's name, James stopped everything. He slowly turned his head, not to face me, but to look at me up and down, seeming to be checking what I was wearing. To which he then replied, "Not looking like that, you're not. Go upstairs and cover up more." I had never heard such a tone from him. Usually he was very soft with how he spoke, but a hard tone of a louder pitch boomed from his mouth this time. And at that moment, I was shocked. I questioned him, asking what he meant and what he was implying by that. But once again, he stopped what he was doing, and this time, he turned his entire body round, walked over to me, and embraced me. Looking at me, he grabbed my face and said, "Never speak back to me like that again." Once again informing me to get changed, and questioning I wouldn't purposely want to upset him, would I? Shocked and now quite scared of his intimidating behaviour, I told him I wasn't trying to upset him. Grabbing my shoulders tight, he smiled, saying that was good, and if I could get changed that would make him feel better. I hate myself for it, but to calm the mood and save an argument, I went and changed before heading out to see my friends. That was all I could think of that night, and it was the beginning of a different side to James I began to see. The second time was again when I was hanging out with my friends just having a few drinks, when from the other side of the bar, I saw James sitting having a drink. When he saw that I'd seen him, he smiled and came over saying it was funny we'd ended up in the same bar. I hadn't told him where I was going that night, just that I would be out with friends. Had he followed me or checked my location? I asked him what he was doing there alone, but he was quick to reply that he was meeting one of his friends there for a drink as well. It was only after I'd spoken to his friend, I found out he hadn't even texted him until after he had come to sit with me and my friends. That happened a few times with him turning up where I was, unannounced, like he was keeping tabs on me. One night I questioned him on it, back at his. He got defensive and began shouting at me, calling me names and saying that I had something to hide. What was the issue of seeing him out? I said that wasn't the issue. The issue was, it seemed like he was following me on purpose, like he didn't trust me, or I wasn't allowed time alone with my own friends. To that, he pinned me up against the door, just like he did in the kitchen, and said not to talk back to him like that. As he let me go, I remember crying from being shocked at what he did. As I went to grab my stuff and leave, he began to apologize and said that he shouldn't have reacted like that, and that he would tell me the truth. To this, I stopped and listened to what he had to say. He said he acted like that and was slightly paranoid due to a previous relationship where he had been messed around and it left him with trust issues. It was something that made me feel sorry for him, and stupidly, believe and forgive him. He told me he would never do anything to hurt me, and he was sorry for pushing me up the door. To that, I stupidly forgave him and stayed the night. We'd only been together 4 months now. I should have read the warning signs and ended it there, but thinking about the good times and the nice James I had met, I didn't. It wasn't until one night we were sitting down watching a movie where I mentioned to him about my plans of going away for the weekend with my friends, as they had asked me if I wanted to go to a concert out of town. He turned to me as he laughed in my face, stating that was a funny joke and that I wouldn't be going away anywhere with my friends. I looked at him, asking, was he joking with that? But inside me, the way he looked at me, I knew he wasn't joking. The smile dropped from his face as he told me it wasn't a fucking joke, and I wouldn't be going. At this point, I had had enough of being told what I could and couldn't do, and his constant personality changes. I stood up, telling him he had no right telling me what I could and couldn't do with my friends, and with my own life for that matter, and that I was getting my stuff and leaving. At this point, he stood up, apologizing. But this time I wasn't falling for that. As I went to move past him, he embraced me in a hug. As he wrapped his arms around me, I couldn't move. He was a lot bigger and stronger than me, and as I asked him to let me go, he squeezed tighter. I told him he was hurting me, but as I said this, he again squeezed tighter. It became so tight I couldn't breathe. It felt like he was crushing me. He rested his head on top of mine as he said to me, I wasn't going anywhere. As the pain became too much, I could feel my heart pounding. I felt like the air was being squeezed out of me. I became lightheaded and thought I was going to pass out. And then, just like that, he let go as I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, holding my sides. I was in tears, but James didn't care. He proceeded to kick me whilst I was down and smacked me across the back of my head asking for my phone, which he took out of my pocket. He told me to go upstairs and get to bed, and that we would discuss this in the morning. He would be keeping my phone as I didn't need to contact anyone. He forcefully helped me to the bedroom and locked me in with him. I laid there all night, scared and crying, thinking of what happened, and watched as he used my phone to text my friend, telling her I wouldn't be going to the concert. The next day, I began packing my stuff. My sides felt bruised, and with tears in my eyes I told James it was over, and that I needed my phone and I was leaving. He sat down and began to cry, saying he didn't mean anything he did, and he was sorry. I wasn't falling for that, and said it was over, and what he did was completely wrong. As I reached for my phone, his crocodile tears dried up and he grabbed my wrist as he stood up. He said that if I left, it wouldn't be the end, and that I was his now, so we could sort this now, or if I walked out, it was not the end of us. He let go, and with that, I told him if he ever touched me like that again, I would call the police. I walked out the door and never looked back. That following week, I received calls and messages from James, ranging from how sorry he was to messages that I was being unfair and not considering his feelings, as all he did was love me. I blocked his number and never replied. I consoled in my friends and family about what was happening and how he was trying to control my life and what he was like behind closed doors. They were shocked and disgusted and wanted to tell the police, but I didn't have any proof of the things he did. I just wanted to move on with my life. But it didn't end there. One day, I was at work and from across the restaurant I could see James sitting alone at a table, watching me. He was sitting in my area to serve, but I clearly didn't want to wait on him, so I asked a colleague to. All the while the colleague was there, James just stared at me. They came back over and said he wouldn't order unless I took his order. I thought this was ridiculous, so I went over to confront him. I told him anyone could serve him and that coming here to see me wasn't going to change a thing. He proceeded to tell me how beautiful I looked and that all he wanted to do was talk, and if we didn't, then he would wait until close. I told him this was not okay and I would call the manager to get him removed. He looked at me and smiled, saying he didn't know why I was being such a bitch. I went to get the manager, but as I came back to the table, James was gone. Later that evening, the manager called me over, looking less than pleased, saying he'd had a complaint sent about me, about my unprofessional behavior and rude attitude, and how I let the restaurant down with my rudeness. I couldn't believe it. I told the manager it was from my ex and it was lies, but he said they're to take all complaints seriously, and he didn't know if it was from my ex. Being in my probation period, this was not good for me. When I left that evening, and everywhere I went after that, whether it would be for shopping, food, or with a friend or again work, I sensed eyes on me. I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Paranoia was kicking in, but I always felt James was not far away, and that's how he made me feel. Then, what happened next, I will never forget. One evening I got a text off a random number. It was clearly him. He said, "Please, will you talk to me? It's an emergency." I wasn't going to reply until an image was sent following the text. It was a picture of James with a rope around his neck. The picture made me feel physically sick. A text followed, "I'm sorry, and I just wanted to say I love you before I go." I texted him back telling him not to do anything stupid. As much as I didn't want to see him, I didn't want to be the cause of anything like this or anyone harming themselves or worse, suicide. He replied saying, "Just know I loved you." I rang the number, but there was no answer. In a panic and not thinking clearly, I decided to go to his as I rang on my way. I texted my friend what was happening to let her know. As I arrived, James's door was unlocked. I stepped in, calling his name, but no answer. As I went to his room, it was empty, but the rope was there. Shocked as I turned around, I was met with the gaze of James, who stared at me with a blank expression as he said to me, "So, I had to pretend to kill myself to get you back." And with that, I couldn't believe what he had done. The sick game he tried to play on me and guilt trip me. I screamed at him how sick that was, and all he could do was stare at me and smile. I couldn't even look at him as I went to walk out. He then grabbed my arm like a vice, pulling me back. "No, not this time. You ain't going anywhere," he told me, telling me I was his and no one else's, as I tried to resist and push him off. But to this, he threw me to the ground, dragged me across the room by my hair. I screamed in pain as he threw me into his room. He pinned me down as he slapped me around the face, telling me to shut the fuck up and stop being silly, that I knew I loved him really. He cuffed my hand to the side of the bed. I was in tears and tried screaming, but he grabbed me round the throat, covering my mouth. As I stopped screaming, he calmly said, "We're going to sort this out and work through this now, or that rope will be for you, not me." And as he said that, and stared at me with his cold, crazed eyes, I believed him. I didn't know what to do. I was scared for my life. The next few hours I sat there listening as he confessed his love for me and how I should stop making him act out like he was, and that if we just sorted it out, things would go back to normal. I was too scared to say anything, so I just agreed with him, having no real intentions but fearing for my life. As I agreed with what he said, a smile graced his face. As he uncuffed me from the bed, Post-adrenaline took over, and I kicked out, hitting him between the legs. As he fell down, I ran past him to the front door, my heart racing. I pulled the door, but it wouldn't open. What I hadn't realized, James had locked the door from the inside with a custom lock he'd put on that you needed a key for. Banging on the door, I screamed. I went for the window, but by this time James was already up and advancing on me with an enraged face. He threw me to the sofa, but before anything else could happen, the sound of banging erupted from the front door. As James looked in surprise, 2 police officers had burst through his front door as he backed up from me. All I could see behind them was my friend I'd messaged earlier that night. I ran over to her as I burst into tears, falling into her arms. Having not heard back from me for hours, and having called me several times, she panicked and contacted the police, explaining what I had texted her. I am so lucky she did, and will always be in debt to her, because if she didn't, I don't know what would have happened that night. But what I do know is, I was being held against my will, and it could have ended a lot worse for me. After a grueling few months, it took their toll on me, reliving the scariest times of my life, and finding out James had previous convictions with stalking charges against other women from before me. I was finally relieved when knowing he was finally charged for what he had put me through, the stalking, the harassment, the assaults on me, and the attempt of false imprisonment. Knowing he would be spending time behind bars, and a restraining order also being put in place, made me thankful I will never have to see him again. But it doesn't stop me thinking about the traumatic experience and the twisted game he played to guilt trip me. I don't know what he thought was going to happen, keeping me against my will, and I don't know what his endgame was for me if I didn't become the woman he wanted. What I do know is I don't think I'll ever be able to fully trust again. This has left a scar on my life. I hope to one day be able to forget. Sadly, these kinds of abusive relationships happen to many people out there, not just women, men too. So if you take anything from this, please be careful. And if you ever find yourself in a toxic relationship like this, seek help and get out before it's too late. Hey everyone, The Collector here. We hope you've been enjoying the chilling content so far. Check out our latest original, The Cursed, by CJ Quinn over to the right. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button and become a part of the Horror Motives community, you won't regret it. Comment to let us know you're here and what topics you'd like to see soon, and remember, fear lies within.